Welcome to Academy of Ultrasound. Tonight's lesson is going to be dealing with week 5 of Echo233, and that's hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, dealing with chapter 8, page 242 to 248. So we're going to continue talking about hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. I'm John Sheldon. I'm one of the Academy instructors, and I'll be your instructor for this lesson. Let's get right into it. As we dealt with in the last session, we're talking about hypertrophic cardiomyopathy and the different types of Doppler profiles that you receive or that you can get with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. The last one that we really touched on was the systolic anterior motion and subaortic stenosis, dealing with ASH, or dealing with asymmetric septal hypertrophy, SAM of the mitral anterior leaflet, coming up and giving you an LVOT obstruction, and how that you actually will accommodate, the Doppler form will be accommodated by your Doppler for your aorta is here, this mid-systolic peaking of the systolic anterior motion from subaortic stenosis is here. The valve is not stenotic. That's what you need to understand. You do not have a stenotic aortic valve. You have a subaortic stenosis. All right, so let's talk about case studies. You have a 48-year-old white female who's 5'4", 138 pounds. 3 out of 6 late systolic murmur. So late systolic murmur already gives you some information. History of cardiomyopathy gives you some information. She has high blood pressure and a heart rate of normal. The continuous wave Doppler across the LVOT at rest and during amyl nitrate. Amyl nitrate is a chemical like smelling salts that they'll give you to actually increase your heart function without the use of a stress test. So what it's done is you've got a very similar waveform here. What you're getting is an aortic waveform with a mid-systolic late peak or a mid-systolic peak from septal hypertrophy. And with amyl nitrate, you'll notice that it gets much, much more substantial. Blood pressure actually goes down with amyl nitrate, so it's not pushing this against as much of a pressure. Another provocative maneuver you could be used to accentuate the LVOT gradient would be a stress test. Case study number 2, you have a 70-year-old white female, 5'2", 110 pounds, again with a systolic murmur, history of CHF, hypertension, coronary artery disease with low blood pressure, and a heart rate of 90, which is a little increased. What's the 3 features of subaortic stenosis that you see in this M mode? Well, the first thing that we see is we see SAM. The second thing that we see is we see LVH, which is thickened ventricular walls. And the last thing we see is early closure of the aortic valve. (2D) and Doppler features in a patient with severe subaortic stenosis. Is the Doppler trace above MR or subaortic stenosis? This particular Doppler tracing, in my estimation, would have to be MR, because look at the value that you're getting, 9 meters a second. If you plug that into your formula, what is your formula? What's your Bernoulli equation? You've got 4b squared, and I apologize, trying to draw on this is not the easiest in the world, but 4b squared, 4 times 9 is 36, correct? But first you have to do the squared. So 9 times 9 is 81 times 4 is somewhere in the neighborhood of 164. You're not going to have a gradient of 164. That is MR. If the LA pressure is estimated at 10, what is the LV pressure? Your systolic blood pressure is 110, your LA pressure is 10, so therefore your LV pressure would be 120. Estimate the gradient across the LVOT obstruction. If you were to take and get your gradient from approximately right here, you'd be in the neighborhood. See where the dark, this is a guess at this point because you really need a better waveform. You really need a better waveform. But it appears to me from this image that your picture gradient would be right about in here. So you're at about 5. 25 times 4 is 100. So you're at about 100 for the gradient, approximately. That'll do us for this evening. Again, please check in the Google and the web for different things pertaining to hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, subaortic stenosis, mid-systolic flow patterns, and such. If you find something of interest that you don't quite understand, please send it to me, John at academyofultrasound.com. and I'll be happy to take a look at it and try to help you interpret it. Keep studying, and I look forward to meeting you on the next session.